All right, welcome to part 2 of learning about natural dyeing from the 18th century. I wanted to start you guys off with something simple. And maybe some of you have dyed before and maybe some of you haven't. So I wanted to use something that most of us are going to have in our kitchen, and that is onion skins. So basically all you need to do is start saving your onion skins back, and when you have enough, then you can dye some wool with it. I mentioned a little bit last time about using a mordant, and that is generally a type of mineral or a tannin that you soak your fibers in before you dye them, and it helps the color to stick to your fiber better. But with onion skins, that is not something you have to do. You can if you want to, but typically onion will stick to the fibers just fine. You need a pot. I use stainless steel because it won't react with the dye. It won't change the color. If you want, you can use an aluminum, you can use a copper, but it's not going to be the same color that I am going to end up with here today. Also, the type of onion skins you use is going to affect the color. Typically people would just use red or purple, or they might use the yellow, but not necessarily together. I got impatient and was tired of cutting onions and saving the skin, so I just kind of mixed mine together. So the first thing you're going to want is a pot. I have a couple that I got at Walmart pretty cheap. You can find them at secondhand stores. And when you get a pot, you're really going to want to use it only for dyeing. The inside of my pot is got some purple streaks in it that I would have to scrub out with a scour pad that I don't want to. Also, I usually set mine on the fire so it's blackened. So unless you want to ruin your pot, I would suggest that you get a cheap one. You also want it to be a good size. You need to have enough water inside of your pot so that your fibers have enough space to move around. If the fibers are all compact in there, then your colors are not going to be even and you're going to have some light spots. And the next thing that we need to do is start to extract the dye from the onion skins. So whenever you have an item that you're using as a dye, you have to extract the color from it, and that's typically done by boiling or simmering in water. Now if you do the harder ones, then that's going to be a little different, like madder root and indigo. Those require a little bit more finesse. So the first thing we need to do is put hot water in. I have filled my pot to about here, and I'm going to put my onion skins inside my pot. So I'm going to take my pot inside and do it on my stove, and then I'm going to bring it to a boil, and after it comes to a boil I'm going to turn it medium-low and let it simmer for about 30 to 35 minutes until the color has been extracted from the onion skins. A lot of times, like I said, I'll do it over fire. I typically do that at the historic site that I'm a part of. So if you want to do it over fire, it's a little harder because you really have to have hot coals for it, and it'll take a lot longer than if you do it on the stove in the house. You can also use a camp stove, a little hot plate, whatever you want to use that's going to produce some heat is going to be just fine. So while we are waiting for the onion skins to finish having the dye extracted from it, I wanted to talk to you about preparing the fibers. So the first thing you want to do is take your skein. This is what, after I finish spinning my yarn, I put it on what is called a yarn swift to let it sit for a few days, and whenever I pull it off the yarn swift, it's like this. So whenever I put this in the dye pot, if I did not have some way of securing this, it would become a huge tangled mess, and I would probably never get the knot taken. So we do what is called a figure 8. So basically you're going to, see if I can get this closer, split it in half. You're going to take your string of some sort, and I am going to go around the back of this one, but over the front of this side, And then this one over here is going to go under this side over here. Hopefully that makes sense. And when I tie this, I don't want to tie it tightly, otherwise it's going to hinder the color from sticking to the yarn because it'll have it kind of cut off. Let me show you this real quick. I forgot to mention whenever I was putting the onion skins in the pot of water that you really need to weigh it first. With onion skins, you want 30% onion skin per weight of fabric. So say I have 10 ounces of onion skins here, then 10 ounces of my yarn, then I would want 3 ounces of onion skins. Now, the next step with the fiber is going to be to pre-wet it. And whenever I pre-wet it, I want to do it in hot water. Probably as hot as you can stand it from the sink. You might even take another pot and get it to simmer to pre-wet your fibers in. You want it to be wet, otherwise it makes it a lot harder for the dye to stick to the fibers. Also, you want to make sure and have it the right temperature, otherwise you could shock the wool, and wool has a tendency to felt, so you have to be careful with the temperature of water. It has been about 30 to 40 minutes of simmering, and I went ahead and pulled the onion skins out, and you can tell that it has a lot less color in it. Now, I could have left it in there for longer and possibly have extracted more coloring from it, but it looks pretty good to me. So it's a kind of an orangey brown color. And I have my skeins of yarn that I set in this hot water a little bit ago. So I'm just going to take it out and carefully stick it in the dye bath. If you are a spinner and you don't have your own white wool, then you can go online and you can Google yarn blanks, and I will make sure and include a link to that in the resources section so that you can buy your own white wool yarn to dye. Okay, so I am going to take this and I'm going to put it back on the stove and let it simmer for probably 30 minutes, and I will check it at that point to see if it has extracted the dye from the water. All right, so it's been about 30 to 40 minutes of simmering on the stove, and brought it out here so that I can show you what it looks like. If I wanted it to be a little bit darker, then I could just let it sit in the pot overnight. It doesn't have to be simmering or anything. But I think it's a good color, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. And so what I'm going to do is hang over my porch railing and let it cool off to room temperature. And then when it's cooled off, I can rinse it out. And the way I do that is just by putting water in the sink in my kitchen, and I make sure that it's the same temperature as what the yarn is. If it's too hot or too cold, then it can shock it and cause it to felt. After it is done rinsing out a little bit, then I will pull it out of the sink, give it a gentle squeeze, because once again I don't want to felt it, and I will wrap each skein into a towel. I will take turns with each skein, wrap it in a towel and squeeze it, and so that helps to get the excess water out without agitating it too much. And then I will bring it outside, and I will probably hang it up here under my umbrella. That way it doesn't get in the sun. If you put it in the sun, then you're running the risk of having it fade out on you. Hopefully you have learned something, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact me through my Instagram account, which is The Wandering Nook. Thank you. Bye.